Just a few hours away now of that major high-stakes hearing on the January 6th attack on our Capitol.
And the committee investigating this attack has promised new details and new video. And today, ABC News actually got an exclusive look at some of what we're going to be seeing in this hearing tonight. It's from the committee's lead witness, a documentary filmmaker embedded with far-right extremists during the attack. ABC News chief Washington correspondent Jon Karl has the details.
Freedom!
Exclusively on ABC, we're seeing extraordinary, never-before-seen video of the January 6th attack on the Capitol, taken by documentary filmmaker Nick Quested, who turned over hours of footage to the January 6th committee. He was right there with the Proud Boys and others as they marched on the Capitol. He captured the chaos outside.
I am not allowed to say what's going to happen today because everyone's just going to have to watch for themselves. But it's going to happen. Something's going to happen, one way or the other.
The first barricades going down. Clashes on the inaugural platform, a rioter falling off the balcony. The police assaulted, rioters using flagpoles as weapons. Reaction when the building is breached.
We have stormed the Capitol! Right on!
And inside the Capitol,
All we want is Pelosi!
a member of his film crew capturing the scene outside Nancy Pelosi's office. The video was shot just minutes after Speaker Pelosi was evacuated from the building by the Capitol Police. Quested himself was assaulted, a rioter seen here trying to smash his camera. In footage previously released by the Justice Department, Quested videotaped Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio as he was released from prison and on the eve of the riot, meeting in an underground parking garage on Capitol Hill with another militant leader, Stuart Rhodes of the Oath Keepers. On day one of the hearings, the committee hopes to document the horror of the day on Capitol Hill and Donald Trump's failure to do anything to stop it.
You'll never take back our country with weakness.
In addition to Quested, they'll hear live testimony from Capitol Police Officer Caroline Edwards, who was injured when rioters broke through the barricades. And we will hear taped testimony from some of those closest to Trump when it all went down, including his daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner.
ABC News chief Washington correspondent Jon Karl joins us now, along with ABC News Supreme Court contributor Kate Shaw. So, John, I want to talk about something that happened today. You had a chance to speak with House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who originally was very condemnatory, very critical of what happened on January 6th and of President Trump. That's all changed, and you asked him a question about the 2020 election, and I want to listen for a second to your exchange with the House Minority Leader, Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
Can you just clarify something? Do you believe that Joe Biden was the legitimate victor of the 2020 election? And do you believe that Donald Trump is just flat wrong when he says the election was stolen?
Look, we've answered this question a long time. Joe Biden is the president. I think you can look that there's a lot of problems still with the election process. They just arrested a former Democratic congressman just the other, was it yesterday in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia? And as we find a lot more information out there, we want to make sure more people have the ability to vote and that it's as secure in with the election where we go.
But that wasn't my question. That wasn't my question. I mean, we know he's the president. He lives in the White House. Was it legitimate? Is Donald Trump wrong when he says the election was stolen?
You know, Jonathan, we talked about this a long time. I've already answered that question.
Thank
you.
What was the answer? Is Donald
Thank you.
Trump
We'll move on
wrong
now.
when
Thank
he
you
says the
very
election was stolen? That's the basis of this. So you won't answer that?
Jonathan, I've answered it numerous times. I know you have a microphone. I know what you want to do. I've already answered the questions with you many times.
Is he wrong when he says the election was stolen?
Thank you for your time. Go right ahead.
Can I get a show of hands on the stage?
And that's the way you do it, Jonathan. Thank you very much for that. Because to this day, the presumptive next Speaker of the House can't acknowledge that the process is under our Constitution of counting the votes chose and resulted in the election of a legitimate president. What do you make of what Kevin McCarthy is doing?
Well, he refused to say that
the election was legitimate, that Joe Biden is the legitimate president, and to express any disagreement with the conspiracy theories and the lies about the election that Donald Trump has said. I asked the question today because it's highly relevant going into this hearing, because January 6th was about stopping that presidential election, stopping that transition. And I think it's astounding, because we know what McCarthy personally views on this, because we've heard now recorded audio tapes of what he was telling Republicans in the immediate aftermath of January 6th, when he was condemning what Trump was trying to do. And we know, as you alluded to, a week after the attack on the Capitol, he came on the floor of the Senate and said that Donald Trump bears some responsibility for what happened in the attack, and that he needs to come out and acknowledge that responsibility. Well, when somebody else asked him if he stood by that, he said, look, I think every American bears responsibility. All of us bear responsibility. So it's astounding. It says something, Terry, about the power that Donald Trump holds over Republican leaders and over a lot of Republican voters. And McCarthy has clearly made a calculation that he can either say what he believes is right and true, or he can preserve his chances at being the next Speaker of the House, because he believes if he gets crossways with Donald Trump, it'll jeopardize his chance of being the Republican Speaker of the House.
Well, Kate, this is, it's not a legal proceeding, but the committee is relying heavily on the court of public opinion, we were just talking about this, to persuade Congress, the Justice Department, and the American people. So let's just talk about some of the legal hurdles here that the committee has already faced and is facing now.
Sure. I mean, well, McCarthy is one example, right? Trying to get testimony from sitting members of Congress, I think, is very much an open question. The committee would like to hear from people like McCarthy directly. We have this disconnect, as John was just pointing to, between what we know McCarthy was saying and doing on January 6th itself, which was to suggest that President Trump wasn't doing enough to stop the riot, that he could, if he wanted to, intercede. And yet we have seen, certainly today, but even within, several weeks of January 6th, a very different tune from McCarthy. So I know that the committee would very much like to hear directly from him and from other members of the House, and maybe the Senate too, about what they were doing and thinking on January 6th. But so far, it doesn't seem to me likely that the committee is going to be able to compel the testimony of sitting members of Congress. They have indicated that they would like that, but I'm not sure that they would go to court to seek to enforce subpoenas, and I'm not sure there's a court that would enforce those subpoenas against sitting members of Congress. So I think that's one open set of legal questions that I think we're not likely to get an answer to, and I think the committee instead is going to bring other kinds of witnesses and other kinds of evidence in front of the American public starting tonight.
Well, speaking of evidence, John, you got an exclusive look at some of this video that we're going to see tonight that was taken by that documentary filmmaker, Nick Quested. What stuck out to you when you saw this? We've clearly seen your piece a number of times today. I thought it was pretty fascinating that he got access to the Proud Boys leader, among others, in the bottom of that parking garage, which is actually kind of the first time we saw something that proved this was being orchestrated and planned.
The video is striking because, Quested is a professional, award-winning documentary producer. He was up there with a crew of 4 people total, 3 plus himself. And, they were as close as anybody, because they were, as you said, embedded with the Proud Boys. They were with them early in the morning of January 6th. They were with them. He was with them as they were effectively casing the Capitol building. And I was able to bring to you a short section of his tape, but he's turned over hours of footage, and I've seen a lot of it. It is raw, and it's powerful, because it's so much of what we've seen has been quick little snippets that people have caught with their iPhones, and this is a filmmaker's look from a very close vantage point to what was going on. I mean, he was so close to the action, Kira, that the FBI for weeks treated him as a suspect. He was interrogated several times. You know, they didn't know what to make of him. Was he effectively a journalist / documentarian, or was he using that as cover? Because the Lord knows he was there with the Proud Boys as they went in. But it's fascinating. I think his story and what he heard will also be very compelling, which is why this guy who has always been a behind-the-scenes, you know, figure. He likes to be the fly on the wall. He makes documentaries. He's never the subject. Now suddenly finds himself, you know, one of the two lead witnesses in a primetime hearing that is one of the most anticipated hearings that we've seen in Congress in a long time.
And it will be anticipated. And Kate, I want to ask you a kind of comparison. So sometimes we talk about justice as a search for truth. Now that happens in court with certain rules and certain objectives. A congressional hearing of this magnitude, you can all go all the way back to the Civil War and Pearl Harbor and the Kennedy assassination, 9/11. We have these national moments where Congress tries to search for truth. You've talked about how they have to be forward-looking to lay down this record. What are the differences? What specifically needs to be done in order to get that truth out there so it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, I mean, it is tempting to sort of search for analogs in history, Terry. You know, moments when Congress sought to really change the trajectory of our politics through these kind of public-facing presentations. You know, you think about the Watergate hearings, which I think did very much change the trajectory of the Nixon presidency. And, you know, ultimately led to the impeachment or the, you know, initial steps towards impeachment and then resignation of President Nixon. The Army McCarthy hearings, to go back even further, right? Hearings that actually, I think, really in many ways led to the downfall of Joe McCarthy. So these were moments where Congress really took a case to the American people and really changed hearts and minds in ways that changed in dramatic ways the trajectory of our politics. And so I think that very much is what Congress, you know, this committee will be seeking to do starting tonight. You know, the public is quite divided about, you know, what really happened in 2020, whether in fact Joe Biden was the rightfully elected president, is in fact the, you know, legitimately elected president. And I think that changing the minds of members of the public who have, you know, continued to accept this big lie that in fact the election was in some way rigged or stolen, I think is an important objective of this hearing from the perspective of the committee. And that's a backward-looking, you know, kind of objective, but it's also a forward-looking objective because, you know, much of what we will hear about, I think, during these hearings, not about January 6th itself, but prior to it, the lead up of it, you know, we see reflected in things that are happening today with questioning the legitimacy of ongoing and future elections. And so there's a forward-looking aspect to these hearings as well.
Because there is a kind of, you're sure, John.
Very important point here, which is the underlying lie, the underlying myth, the conspiracy theories associated with it, that the election was stolen. It is a major purpose of this committee to dispel that myth and to set that record straight, because so many of those that were behind this violence were propelled to do so, to attack the Capitol, because they believed the election was stolen. And if you actually believe that that is factual, if you believe that Joe Biden and the Democrats were essentially trying to seize power illegally and and overturn a legitimate, electoral victor, then you can justify that kind of violence. These people talk in terms of the American Revolution of 1776. This is our 1776 moment, one Republican member of Congress said on January 6th. If you believe that, then it's time to take up arms to defend your democracy. So that looking backward, which I also agree with Kate, is about looking forward and establishing a truth to move forward on. That looking backward is central to their mission. It's not just about, a bunch of people breaking into the Capitol and, assaulting police officers. That's horrific and awful. But there's something bigger here, and that's the mission of this committee to establish it.
That's a great point, absolutely. We have settled disputes like this in courts of law. This one, not. The only other election that got contested that way was 1860. That didn't turn out so well. And once this thing gets going, it's hard to turn it around. So, Jon Karl, Kate Shaw, thanks very much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.